Welcome back to The Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you are currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps along your journey. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now, let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world. The game has changed. As the basketball season is getting underway, it is a reminder that the game of basketball has been the same for well over 100 years since it was created. The game of basketball has been the same. The rules have basically been about the same. But the way the game is being played today is absolutely different. It's the same game that it was created over 100 years ago, but the style in which the game is being played is absolutely different. The game has changed. Did you know that just 10 years ago, there was not one team in the NBA, in professional basketball, that averaged attempting over 32 three-point shots per game? There wasn't one team in the league that averaged over 32 three-point shots per game. And now, just 10 years later, more than half the teams of the league, and growing, average attempting between 32 and 42 three-point shots per game. Only 10 years later, and more than half the league shoots and attempts between 32 and 42 three-point shots per game. The entire game has changed. The pace of play, the spacing on the floor, the type of personnel needed, the type of skill sets, the type of players needed, the way that you need to be able to defend multiple positions and defend the court has changed the strategy of what type of players you're looking for and the strategy of how you have to play if you want to compete in today's game. For the listeners, I don't know exactly what your business is or what your life looks like, but I can guarantee that the way you move throughout the world on a daily basis has changed in many regards. That many things have changed over the course of even just the last 10 years in the way that you operate and the way that your game is being played. How your game is being played from a technology standpoint, communication, the generational shift. The game has changed in so many different ways. When we think about the ways that things have changed just in the last decade, you think about the change, the disruptions that have happened in the world and in the way we move in the business and the way that we think, from rental cars to Uber and Lyft, to our holiday shopping, entering into jam-packed stores around the holidays with people everywhere, to sitting back on a computer and with Amazon Prime ordering the presents you want and having them shipped to your house in less than 48 hours. From the idea of traveling around the world and having to connect to a hotel chain system, to now with Airbnb and VRBO, that now these experiences and homes and communities around the globe have unlocked possibilities. We can still travel, but the game of travel has changed. We can still rent vehicles and transportation is still fairly the same, but the way the game has changed is different. And so when we think about, and hopefully on this podcast, you step back to think about your game, the game that you're playing, whether you think about that as your team, your organization, your company, your industry, or you're thinking about it from the standpoint of your family and how your family dynamics have changed, how your church has changed, how your organization you care about has changed, how your little league sports have changed. Whatever lens through which you're looking at this, the reality is that the game has changed over the last decade and certainly continues to change. And so we need to know, what game is it that we're playing? And are we employing the right strategies to be effective in that game? Are we utilizing the right players? Are we playing at the right pace? Are we changing our strategy so that we can ultimately be effective in the game that's being played today rather than the game that was being played yesterday? The image that often comes to my mind when I'm sharing with teams and organizations or speaking to groups is that when we think about our mindset of creating leaders and culture and clarity around mission, vision, and values, is oftentimes I give them the image of the difference between a rearview mirror and the windshield. That too many individual leaders and too many people get stuck, metaphorically, as they're sitting behind the wheel of their car for their business, for their team, for their family, for the life that they're trying to create. They're sitting metaphorically behind that steering wheel. And yet too many individuals, but also entire teams and organizations, get stuck looking only in the rearview mirror. They get fixated looking in that rearview mirror to see, where were we yesterday? What did we accomplish? Where have we just been? And yet when we find ourselves staring only in that rearview mirror, where we end up going is either backwards, we get in an accident, or we end up going nowhere because we're spending so much time and energy looking about the history of where we've been. And yet the reality is, we know that as the world around us is changing and the game is changing, the most effective leaders, teams, and organizations in the world, and just humans, parents, people, friends, people in the world, the most effective and successful at navigating their way through the way the game is being changed are the ones that spend the majority of their time looking out the windshield. They realize they need to peek at the rearview mirror every once in a while because we need to know. We need to be reminded of where we've been, the successes that we've had in the past, the obstacles we've faced, the paths we've taken. We need to learn from those, of course. But we can't spend the majority of our time looking in the rearview mirror. We need to spend the majority of our time looking out the windshield, which means we're asking the question of, where is it that we want to go tomorrow? In this new game and the way that it's being played, how do we need to change our route to think about how we're going to drive and where we want to go next? And so, peeking at where you've been to learn from the past, but spending most of your time looking out the windshield in preparation for where you want to go, how you need to drive, and who you need in the car with you. And so the game is changing. The game has changed. And I guarantee you, your game continues to change. And there will certainly be some truths and some elements that always stay the same. But how your game is being played will continue to evolve and change. And the best leaders, teams, and organizations about setting a temperature and shaping what they want the future to become are the ones that are able to adjust, to adapt, to be agile enough to say, how do we need to change the way we're playing so that we can be effective and perform in alignment with our mission for the way that the game is now being played? So a few reflection questions or some things to step back and ponder for this week. My invitation for some questions for you to let echo throughout your head and as you're sitting behind that steering wheel of your own life or your own business or that vision for where you're trying to go, some questions that I invite you to think about this week. How has the game of your business, your family, or the vision for your life changed in the last 10 years? In what ways do you need to play the game differently moving forward? In what ways do you need to change the way you play the game differently moving forward? Do you need a new strategy, new skills, new players, or just a new vision for where you or the people that you're collaborating with need to go next? What skills or behaviors need to be improved personally and collectively on your team? The game has changed, so we need to be reminded of what is the game that we're playing, how do we want to play it, and what do we need to do next? Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast platform or social media platform you're using, and share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of this conversation. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or this kind of development would add value to your team or organization, we hope you'll contact us at www.jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we all are ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.